Excellent, and welcome to TADSummit Innovators. We have an amazing innovator. It's the Czar of the TCPA and much, much more. Please, the Czar, introduce yourself.
Hey folks, Eric Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, partner here at Troutman Amin LLP, world-renowned telecom lawyer, and just a knucklehead hanging out with these guys. A couple brilliant folks that really excited to be spending some time with.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric. Excellent introduction. So, Johnny, I know you've been wanting this for so
Amazing.
long now. Go for it.
Listen,
Go for it.
I went on the Czar show. They treated me with all the respect in the world. Obviously,
Yep.
we know what happened with the meth blow up. I mean,
Yep.
we're in the middle of it. Czar goes off and writes, comes out with more content every day that every
Yep.
person in this industry. A lot of the industry doesn't understand the TCPA, how important it is,
Yes.
how important it is to business people in the USA. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the important, because I tried to do it in another podcast, but we didn't have Czar. And we were talking about UMail and what role they play in the ecosystem, which is really getting certain information. I mean, obviously, there's two sides of their business. There's a side of business where they make money off voicemail and monetize that, but then they capture a lot of data, both on AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, as well as whether it be Tata or Twilio or any of these cease and desist. I mean, anytime you see a cease and desist, as you know, Czar, it's tied to UMail because they've built
For the
out
most
this
part.
brilliant backend.
Yeah.
So Mike Rudolph on the CTO side, who's our favorite, although we can't get him, he's like secret agent man, is pretty brilliant. We got Alex on, he was great.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in this industry, they don't understand how big and important TCPA is and how
Yes.
important you are. Like when I first went on, I'm like, guys, messing with the TCPA, it's insane. Because if Czar wanted to, he could flip the script and go from defense attorney to doing a deal with UMail, and you could just clean up. Like my business advice is maybe maybe go on the other side, do a deal with UMail, and make yourself a couple $100 billion, because spam ain't stopping.
No.
Yeah, no, look, those guys make a ton of dough on the other side of the V. Philosophically, I like where I am. I like protecting people, particularly small businesses, taking care of folks. Now, not the scumbags, understand, but the folks that want to do it the right way. I like giving them advice. I like helping them to comply with the law. And then if they do get sued, especially by like a scumbag repeat litigator or something, like I really like taking care of folks. But you're not wrong, Johnny. I mean, UMail has a massive, massive footprint right now in the overall telecom infrastructure in the US. And it's all a byproduct ultimately of the shift that we've seen from common carriers back in 2014 and for 80 years since the Communications Act, who were essentially exactly what you think, a common carrier, right? They were not supposed to throttle, limit, censor, prevent any communication from going forward. That was bedrock law in the United States. It was really quite the superpower that allowed our telecom infrastructure to grow so powerful for so long.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, of course, in the face of the robocall epidemic, the FCC began allowing certain segments of population or of certain scam or spam communications to be blocked first on an opt-in basis and then on a default basis by the carriers. And now, of course, we're in a world where carriers can block essentially anything using reasonable analytics that they think people aren't going to want, even if it's perfectly legal communication. And UMail sits in this weird place where it has massive honeypots, right? Which is just another way of saying they own hundreds of thousands of phone numbers. And they listen in as people make phone calls intended for, you or me, but, maybe the phone number was incorrectly entered or the phone number's changed hands and now UMail owns the phone number. And they'll listen to these voicemails, and when they detect a voicemail that might be, perhaps fraud or perhaps not fraud, just maybe it's a marketing call that they think, this doesn't sound right. Maybe there's not enough consent for it. How did they get my number? I'm a honeypot, for God's sake. I didn't give consent. And then they will, as you pointed out, Johnny, they will give that information to something called the ITG. That's the Industry Traceback Group, which is an organization run by US Telecom. US Telecom will ingest that data from UMail. They will then do what's called a traceback, right? Try to find the source. Where did that phone call come from? And once they find that source, they will liaise most often with the FCC, the FTC, the AG, the DOJ. So essentially, and I like Alex Quilici quite a bit, but UMail is the biggest narc in the history of our nation. Just out there turning people over to the feds, right, day in, day out. And no, they'll tell you that's not
You're
true.
right.
And I'm making that a little, I'm being a little glib, because they don't turn them over to the feds. They turn them over to the ITG. The ITG turns them over to the feds, right? So it's a little, there's one step in between. But yeah, UMail is, to my knowledge, still like the #1 source for the cease and desist orders, the FCC shutdowns, even the persecutions or prosecutions by the AG's offices of certain carriers, and sometimes even the individuals that run the carriers. All of which, certainly there are extreme examples where, offshore IRS scams, people taking advantage of kids and elderly, sure, like that needs to be shut down. These people need to be punished.
Yeah.
But so much of this now is just, whose speech gets to come through, whose doesn't, and it's a real problem from my perspective under the First Amendment and licensing rules, and allowing UMail and private enterprises to decide who gets to speak in this country is a real issue, even on a post hoc basis. And of course, something like TCR, which does so on a, before you're allowed to speak, a prior restraint on speech, if you will, is an even bigger issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I just want to clarify a little bit. So Mike Rudolph is the reason that on that side of the spectrum, you call him, the biggest narc. The FCC recently had a meeting in DC last week. We reported on it, where the CTIA called a one-of-its-kind meeting where they had Cinches, the TCR, Aegis, and all Twilio and everybody there in one place talking to law enforcement. It was a bit of a clown show because we all thought it was going to go towards regulation on SMS. What came out of the meeting was basically the FTC, FCC, this is what I've told secondhand by like 5 or 6 people that were there, that because of Mike Rudolph and working with him, they were going to look to try to solve the problem. Because, look, the problem that you're talking about that's hurting your people is very important. There's another technology that we came across, because we have a lot of technology companies, that we'd like to maybe offline set up a conversation with him and TNID, Noah, because it really fits into what his good old American people that are running their business. I mean, look, selling is America. It's 80% of this country runs on small business. And these people need to communicate people that want to be communicated to. But the whole, what you're doing, you're 100% right. But our mission, Alan Quayle's mission and my mission was, being able to stop spamming a grandma on spam texts. So we unraveled Czar. They started the TCR, and I think I talked about it in your podcast. And we were stifled as well with messaging out there, because they're just making too many billions of dollars, all the aggregators. I mean, Twilio makes so much money off spam. I mean, Twilio tried to buy the campaign registry before I did. So then I got brought in by management Czar to do a buyout. And, but it didn't work. It still doesn't work because there's 78 billion spam texts. But I'm glad you elaborated on that. But I want you to talk a little bit more about, how do you see this going now with net neutrality? I know I hate to hit you with this. I don't know if you probably had a chance to go through that, because I think it's really important. But obviously, I don't have the background that you do. That's something that just came up. Like, I hate to spring it on you, but how do you see net neutrality playing a role?
Honestly, I don't. And someone would have to put that together for me, right? Net neutrality, you're looking at broadband as a communication service as opposed to an information service. I find that most fascinating from a classification standpoint, right? Because I'm a big law nerd. I look at broadband, and although it is a backbone facilitator of certain forms of communication, VoIP, it is not, in my view, necessarily a communication in and of itself. To me, it feels like an information service, which would allow throttling of different layers of the messaging world, which is what I think the commission is trying to avoid. But ironically, of course, when you look at text messaging, SMS, which to me is plainly a telecommunication, right? Like, when you send a text message to somebody, you are, wait for it, communicating, right? Like, it's not like you're talking about something else. You're talking about a communication. right? And somehow a text message is not treated as a Title II communication, it's treated as a Title III information service. And to me, that's just the most bizarre thing in the world. Now, it was done, of course, to allow for throttling and for censorship of the SMS channel more freely by the carriers. And this all comes back, ironically, to the pre-2015 world we were talking about. Because before communications, you could not censor, block, throttle. They had to go through. Title III information services, you could do whatever you wanted with them, right? So that was always the paradigm. And to a certain extent, that paradigm exists outside of, right, the SMS channel. That's why net neutrality is so important. But it's kind of an interesting thing. To me, the most important thing about net neutrality from the world that I live in is it's like a microscope, a mirror that like reflects back the oddness of the contrary treatment of SMS messaging. To me, the story, right, because again, I'm more focused on outreach using phones, right? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I care most about. The fact that SMS messaging is treated as an information service specifically to allow for more blocking is just fascinating. It's wrong as a legal matter. But then what's even more interesting is how it's wrong as a practical matter, because since the reclassification, or actually it wasn't a reclassification, ironically, it was Twilio who asked for a reclassification and it was denied back in 2018. Since that reclassification was denied, right, in 2018, then Chairman Pai of the FCC said, hey, look, text messages are information services, and that's why you don't get any spam texts, because the carriers can block it, right? Ironically, 6 years later, now the text spam is out of control, right?
Out of control.
What changed? What changed? Well, what I look at what changed is TCR got involved. And I don't know why. I don't know why it is that before TCR, when you could use A to P, unregistered on a 10DLC, and yet there wasn't all the spam traffic. And once 10DLC got the rollout to the campaign registry took place, all of a sudden we have more spam traffic. I don't understand
it's 10
why
times.
that is. But why, right? I mean, you seem to have some theories on it. I don't have the answer to that question.
I can tell you why. I can tell you why. And Alan, you may want to jump in and be a little more thorough on this. So prior to the TCR, a company called Innovators, which I had to go through a lawsuit with against them. I restructured one of the 3 messaging hubs. So you have Innovators sitting in between T-Mobile and AT&T, and you have Cinch, which used to be SAP, now sitting in Verizon on P2P. Prior 2015, 2016, when I had a hub, we were the ICV for Metro PCS. What we used to do, because it wasn't that much spam, they would pump all the application to person messages through the P2P routes, right? And just get enough of it to where it wasn't too much. But what happened was the phenomenon of Twilio. That's what happened. So Twilio and then, Vonage, Cinch. What happened was the phenomenon of CPaaS, which Alan is one of the biggest experts in the world on. And it exploded. So messaging exploded as that vehicle. No way better to connect with your person. It's a 98% open rate. I mean, you know that. I mean, you're talking about this. There is no better way to communicate. So I don't think it was so much. The TCR was put in place because what happened was the carriers, Twilio had an $80 billion market cap at one time, right? They were trading at 20 times revenue, not even $4 billion in revenue, and trading at $80 billion, where AT&T is trading at $118 billion market cap. I mean, so think about how close they were to a company with all the infrastructure, revenue, and debt that an AT&T has. So then they flipped the script and they created this campaign registry for the sole purpose to try to monetize it, tariff it, right? But they did it, and the original plan, and I can't wait till Bill Peters, who's the founder of the campaign registry and the first RFPs, is able to talk. They did it and basically made it not work by design. So now the mobile operators, I'll answer it. 2018, making zero off A to P messaging. 2022, 20 billion plus. You see the shift, right?
Yeah. So essentially, the carriers became jealous of the valuation and the money that Twilio was making over what they're providing, which is SMS. So TCR was introduced so they could monetize basically A to P and take their fair share. Europe has the same problem as well, but here in North America, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile wanted their fair share of all those A2P revenues. So if you've already authorized your campaign, it's half a penny. If you want to send spam, it's a penny because there is no control over there. So that's why they're making tens of billions and why the TCR was introduced with this very weird, you have to register, but if you don't, well, you just pay a little bit more. So that's why
TCR is controlled by the three operators. Sorry.
Yes.
The TCR is its owned farm, but it's controlled by three individuals that spent years setting this up in collusion without the umbrella of the CTIA. So we've been calling for an antitrust suit for years, but there's no lawyers out there with enough nerve to go out and try to fight these arbitration clauses that the operators have. There's a real antitrust lawyer out there. There's a case that's insane because the three operators set this up by design. Originally, the RFP was run by CTIA, which is basically the operators, arm, and iConnective, who also owns the short code registry. Exactly. So this was all created. But if you look at one thing, if you just look at Twilio's market cap a few years back, 80 billion, today 10. Cinch, 20 billion, today 2. They're all taking it back. Well, more so in the USA. Internationally, the different ecosystems are. We have something called artificially inflated traffic. They're charging 15 cents, 20 cents in some countries for termination and just running spam through it on artificial. So it really just comes down to money. That's what really happened. I'm not sure if me and Alan explained that good enough for you or concise enough. Because I know you're bit.
Well, I'll put it this way. To me, the key takeaway that I had from that I guess I hadn't realized before, and that isn't necessarily consistent with what I've seen, is that you can continue to carry unregistered A2P traffic. You just have to pay more for it. I didn't know that. Because I mean, look, we have all of our clients are looking for white channels, so to speak, and they want to be able to get their traffic through. So they're all running registered traffic, and it's interesting. To my knowledge, there was no alternative. I thought that was the concept of TCR, is the ultimate gatekeeper to the networks. You don't get to do P2P on a 10DLC. You can't register your campaigns. You can't get them turned on with any legitimate provider without that clearance. But what you're saying is you just have to pay more for it.
Well, you pay more for it, or you run it through Cineverse. Cineverse, when I was doing my diligence, had very little campaigns. Why? Because they had the P2P routes, so they could still pipe it through. Why did Twilio give $750 million to Cineverse? So what got Jeff Lawson fired, according to the lead activists that we unraveled, is Jeff Lawson Twilio paid $750 million for a minority stake in a company called Cineverse that was the hub for Verizon and T-Mobile, right? These guys were a couple of billion in debt, had a failed SPAC deal, and Jeff Lawson's answer was, well, we'd like to help our friends. What public company buys a minority stake in a company with $1.3 billion in debt if you're not getting access benefits, right? So Cineverse could do whatever they want at the end of the day. They can pipe in whatever they want. The carriers can do whatever they want. Cinch technically could, but I don't think they're sharp enough or have enough nerve to do that. But, I know of another route through Europe that can go through them. They won't even see it coming because it's hard to find out what's P2P, what's A2P. Because all A2P is P2P with a label and a dollar amount. That's all it is. Because when I had my hub, we had zero cost. It cost me $0 to send a message to Verizon, $0 to send a message to AT&T. So it's an economic game. Did I make sense on that one? So there was zero cost on person to person, which they turned into application to person, and they call it CPAS. That's why there's a new rock song called CPAS. I don't know if you heard it by Anthony Minicelli. I know I'm going on a tangent again. Alan, take over here because I think I'm losing it. But he's almost there.
It's important that you understand that TCR is just for 10 DLC. So it's like one piece of A2P SMS. We have all the 800 SMS that's owned, controlled by Twilio. We then have, of course, the short code registry run by iConnective. That's locked down. So that's pretty solid. So that's not
locked down, but it's expensive. People don't like it. It works. But the reason why they went the other way to try to make it cheaper.
Yeah.
And then let me tell you something else.
No. Let me just finish off. There's one important fourth component, which are SIM boxes. So you just basically get some SIMs from carriers, and then you basically have a box. You put all those SIMs in that box, and then you run campaigns, spam out. Essentially, it's peer-to-peer. So you've paid for them, and carriers can do detection.
The carriers are the biggest spammers.
Yes, exactly.
That's what he's trying to say, Czar.
Yeah, because they're making money. So, they're making money out of spam. That's the problem.
Hope we helped him. Did he leave?
No. He's there. He's thinking.
I'm absorbing, some of this stuff. SIM boxes. I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, I'll be honest, right? I'm a telecom lawyer.
Yeah.
I operate in the legal environment, and I respect and enjoy, the innovators and the hard tech guys, and I like learning. But SIM boxes, I've never heard of this. I mean, if you want to explain to me, maybe your audience already knows what this is, and they're like, "Oh, who's this Czar guy? He doesn't know nothing about nothing." And when it comes to SIM boxes, they would be right.
No, Alan had to go. Alan had to geek out on you because that's what he does. Didn't come from me, Czar.
But it's an important component. You've got the 800 SMS, 10 DLC, short code, and then you've got all the crap that comes through the SIM boxes.
We could also go from email to SMS, which we can't get to. But let's consolidate it as far as what Czar sees, what his clients want.
Yes.
His clients don't care about SIM boxes. Clients don't care about anything else other than the way to reach their customers, because it's the best way to reach a customer. That's all he cares about.
Yeah.
But Czar, you are right. The campaign registry was designed not to work. Now you have Aegis and net number and them all pointing at each other, but it still doesn't work. There are solutions out there. We found one. We have a podcast for them next Wednesday called Trusted Number Identity that could pretty much clean this up. I mean, all your customers and your clients will be running to this platform because it'll do everything that they need for them to do, right? But you've got customers that you have some of your clients that have people consenting them, they're still getting blocked, right? Yes. If you're in a gray area, POS systems, you're going to flip out when your customers, your clients are going to flip out when they have the option of trusted number identity, which is basically people taking back their own identity. It's called self-sovereign identity. You sign up at a platform, you have a number attached to it, bang. You decide who can call you, who can text you, when they can call you, when they can text you, and who can sell your data. And that's a pretty groundbreaking technology that this gentleman, actually, Umail has a similar patent to it, just not as broad as this guy's. But anyhow, so that's another conversation with you. But so look, where are we going next? Why do we get here?
You're
just to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, but I just want to look. We have time here with Czar. As long as he lets us talk, we'll talk all day. But Czar, you talked about some foreign ownership. We talked about TikTok. We talked about your thoughts on that, because I basically told you I quit. I mean, I give up. You said have faith. I'm like, okay, Czar, are you gonna? Because your audience, everybody out there, everybody, the FCC, FTC, all the agencies, all the lawyers are reading TCPA world like it's religion. So just understand that.
They're watching this right now. I can basically.
Well, when we film it, it ain't live. They will watch it, but they read your stuff. I mean, since I signed up, I'm sitting here like I'm a TCPA fan. I'm like watching the content. I actually want your guys to teach Alan how to market, because the worst marketing guy, the worst marketer in the world, Czar. I don't know how we got so many viewers. Our market's YouTube. But if you can even teach him how to do what you're doing, we were talking about that before you got on. But yeah, I mean, so what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on TikTok? What are your thoughts on the foreign ownership of the TCR? How are you giving me hope? Because I've given up.
Yeah, well, so let me just put this whole thing into context, right? So, this is like an innovator podcast.
Yeah.
I'm a great lawyer. I've innovated a ton of different legal arguments and come to market. That means the courtroom and really created tons of precedent. But my greatest, I think, contribution as an innovator is actually in the creation of something called Responsible Enterprises Against Consumer Harassment, R.E.A.C.H., which is a trade organization designed to set standards in something called the lead generation industry. Yeah. And the lead generation industry, as much as any other single thing in the world, has created a lot of spam and unwanted telemarketing because essentially this industry has websites where consumers come on, any comparison website, any content-based website with a form fill, and they encourage consumers to fill out a form, sometimes under false pretenses, and then put their phone number in there. And once that happens, right, these websites will take that data and sell it tens of thousands of times, at sometimes hundreds of times, sometimes dozens of times, sometimes only 5 or 6 times, but it doesn't really matter because every time they sell it, it gets resold, it gets resold, it gets resold, and it ends up in the hands of marketers who believe that they're trying to contact somebody who's actually interested in whatever good or service. But it turns out, of course, the consumer filled out that form a year ago, or they fill out a form about they were interested in buying a house, and they're getting phone calls for solar and for lawn mowing services or whatever else. So R.E.A.C.H came along in order to try to prevent these bad behaviors, really the numbers of unwanted calls that are out there. And through its work, I mean, we've stopped billions of robocalls already, and we're continuing to do that work. So that my efforts through R.E.A.C.H,
it's extremely important.
Very close. It brought me very close with the FCC in a number of ways. Of course, we liaise we try to work very closely with the commission, and we work with them on a number of policy matters around the TCPA in particular. But I was reviewing the comments. I was looking through the record of the FCC back in February and in March because there was an open comment period. I was very interested to see who was weighing in on an FCC proceeding. And as I'm going through, looking for basically small business comments, these are comments for small businesses, I see a letter from an organization called Latham Watkins, which is generally considered to be like the biggest, scariest law firm in the whole world, right? And I'm thinking, why is Latham representing a small business to the FCC? It's just it's very odd to me. And so I open up the letter, and as I'm reading it, I realize they're not representing a small business. They're representing the campaign registry. And they're representing the campaign registry in responding to a letter from somebody named Rick Joyce, who I'd never heard of, that had been filed in the record about a month earlier. So I pull up Joyce's letter. It's on behalf of something called TCR Acquisition, which I think maybe, Johnny, you might be familiar with. And so I read Rick's letter, which is, well enough crafted. It's a little lengthy for me. I like things a little bit more punchy and to the point. But it basically tells a story that the campaign registry is basically absorbing data regarding calling practices for the entire country, and then potentially at least sharing that information with their corporate parents, who, by the way, happen to be foreign owned. And it doesn't take long to kind of put those 2 points together and think, wait a second, that's pretty weird. You do have an entity here where everybody has to register in order to get their traffic through, or as you guys just pointed out, maybe not get it through, but have to pay less for it. I still think you have to actually do it in order to get the access at all, but maybe not. But that's just my view. I represent the good guys, the white label guys. So from our perspective, you have to go through TCR if you're going to get to the network, right? So all of the good players in the entire industry are going and registering their traffic with TCR, meaning they're telling the TCR who they are, what they're doing, what they intend to do, how many times they intend to do it, what the cadence is, where the consents are coming from, what it's about, sometimes the content of the messages. I mean, like really open Komodo stuff here. And then TCR is basically saying yes or no, tweak it this way. You get a trust score. You can send 10,000 a day. You can send 100,000 a day, which, as I pointed out in my own podcast, I mean, that's just wild censorship. This is like Nazi level stuff. I mean, it's crazy. This is not free speech. This is inconsistent with the First Amendment. It's the most un-American thing in the world. No surprise, they're not American, right? These folks are Euro-based. And as you pointed out, Johnny, have some pretty close ties apparently to China. Now, I don't know that. That's something I'm just kind of, sharing that you've told me. But the bottom line is, right, I read Rick's letter and I think, that is pretty problematic, right? I read Latham's letter, and Latham's letter is ridiculous. I mean, there's no teeth to it at all. It's basically like, oh, this is just jingoistic nonsense. Oh, we're you xenophobes out there. Oh, lots of stuff is foreign owned. Nothing to see here. Leave us alone. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wait, what? They don't even deny that information is being shared with the corporate parent, right? The foreign parent. They don't deny that there's critical, valuable information that's being afforded. Like, there's no treatment of the substantive claims and statements, which I believe are accurate in Rick's letter. They just kind of rhetorically try to just say, look over here, right? Like Wizard of Oz, look over here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And I was just stunned, right? So I'm looking at this, And, I'm a busy guy. And so I have about 22 minutes to spend, literally. I think that's how long it took me to read both letters and to write the blog, right? About 22 minutes. And so I just write this up. And, truthfully, it's not my best work. But I just kind of like real quick, here's what Rick says. Here's what they say. This is nuts to me. And primarily my angle was, look what a bad job Big Law did, right? Because Latham, God knows how much TCR paid for that letter. I don't know. But I mean, it could be 50, it could be 100K for like a letter, right? I just don't know. And then it ended up being, in my opinion, just absolutely toothless. So that was it. That was all that that was my entire agenda, right? There was nothing more to it. But the universe, I think, had a plan. And I think the universe had a plan here. Because my partner, Pooja Amin, this is her. This is Pooja. She had been invited to talk on a panel by this thing called I call them the Mobile Brotherhood, right? It's like a real boys club in my view. But they go by, I guess, the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, a conference down in Florida. And they had invited my partner to speak. We talked about it's like a real small scale thing, right? I mean, it's like a little basement, kind of conference. Like it was tiny. It was like the smallest thing. And usually we don't speak at places like that, but Pooja wanted to go. She felt like, it was a good audience to talk to. And so, she was going to go. Well, anyway, as you know, right, TCR, Campaign Registry, is apparently like a big sponsor and member and board member of, or at least their parent company is Kalera, of the Mobile Ecosystem.
They are
Forum.
too.
And so within, I don't know, it was like within 24 hours or 36 hours or something, all of a sudden, like Pooja just gets this really dismissive email from this guy named Dario Betty, who's like the global head of the entire trade organization, right? Sends like this 2-line, like, oh, you know what? Our audience doesn't want to hear from you, email to Pooja, which was just nuts. I mean, it was like I couldn't believe like how dismissive it was. Pooja had already like made travel plans. She'd already been prepping for this thing. It was like less than a week away. And it was like, nah, you're off our panel. Like with no explanation, just nothing. And oh, by the way, it was on International Women's Day, right?
Yeah.
So
Tone deaf.
I get a hold of this and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, right? Now, I believed and still believe that her being dismissed off the panel likely has 100% to do with my article on the TCR. Now, I don't know that because nobody's confirmed that to me. And in fact, I've actually heard something different than that. So I still kind of, in my mind, I'm not entirely sure. But what I do know is those guys at MEF, the little Mobile Brotherhood, with all their male board members, I think they got a couple of girls now that they added after we threw a big fit, or at least that they publicized after we threw a big fit. These guys, they really pissed me off. And obviously Pooja was just devastated. She was so hurt by the way they treated her. It was like a really big deal. And so, as you know, it's the word spread, and there was like protesters that showed up at the event. The guys, the Brotherhood here is on the cover of Deserve to Win magazine, the April edition. This thing is awesome. You guys should get a copy of it.
I think you need to throw in some gym memberships for them.
Yeah, I mean, look. So this thing, it's $25 usually for this. We're giving it away for free because like it's a pretty big deal, and we want people to be aware of what happened. So anyway, so
how many copies you got?
So we've got a circulation of about 4,000. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but if you want a copy, we know the printer. We can send them out to you guys. Just let us know how many you want.
Quite a few.
So look, these guys had made me fairly unhappy. It looked like they like I said they added some female board members. They publicized it quite a bit in response to the outcry and the protest. And initially I was like, you know what? Okay, great. We've effected change. That's what we're after. We'll be cool, right? I think, as you know, R.E.A.C.H is the trade organization I was telling you about. C.H sits on my board. C.H, they replaced the chairman, which I thought was a nice move as well. They put C.H's head evangelist, Robert Gershman, as the new chairman over at
largest shareholders. They own C.H.
So I figured, to me, that looked like a pretty good nod to me. That looked like a pretty good concession. So I was like, we cool. And then Robert turns around and sends out this really nasty email, like calling Pooja a liar, like blame the victim, like just straight up like a rapist playbook. You know what I mean? I was like, you got to be kidding me with this, guys. Like, you got to be kidding me. And so then that resulted in us really revving up the war machine and and now they're on the cover of a magazine. What a nice little artifact. This is going to last forever. And that organization is not going to last. They're not going to survive this. I can pretty much guarantee it. And, you mentioned antitrust stuff. I know the Euro bros, they're kind of socialists. They don't really understand free competition and how serious the antitrust laws are here in the United States. But they might be finding out. I'm just saying. Maybe they'll find out. I don't know. So anyway, that all brought, that's all background to ultimately, right, TikTok, right, was just banned now in the United States, foreign ownership. And of course, this immediately rings bells to me that if TikTok, right, is a national security threat because it's foreign owned and it has a platform where it can alter politics in the United States, and it has the ability to gather information that might be shared with hostile powers. You think about TCR. We're not talking about like recipe videos and teenagers dancing. Like, we're talking about
it's a mandatory step that you got to take in the U.S. Protects to your phone. TikTok is an app. You don't have to download.
This is a blueprint. This is a blueprint for every business and every planning for communication, right? Like, if you're a political campaign, you have to can you imagine this? You're a political candidate. You are running for office. You have to, in order to get your text messages through, you have to register your intentions with a foreign-owned company. Here, foreign ownership company, me, American politician running for Congress, here's who I'm going to text, where I got these videos from, or where I got the numbers from, what my content's going to be, what my message is going to be. You have to clear that by a foreign-owned company that can decide whether or not to censor you. That is flipping unbelievably stupid. I just cannot believe that is how we're living in this country. And it is. And it's the same thing, of course, with American businesses, right? Can you imagine this? You're an American business. Maybe you've got a global market. You've got competitors who are foreign-owned. And here you are having to share your communication strategy with a foreign-owned company who, by the way, does not have to account to you for what they're doing with that data at all. Period. Full stop. And their lawyers
even to the people subscribing.
What's that?
Even to the people that are subscribing. What you're going to find out in the next couple of weeks is all those companies and your clients that are registering on TCR with Aegis, mark my words, all their information is being sold in the other third markets.
This is my concern, right? See, I don't know this, but this is my concern.
Go try to register a company in California. They'll do it live. TCR. Register a company in California, right? Make up a name. Mindy Flintstone. Don't use that one because they'll know it's coming. See if you get registered. Then see if it's on the do not sell my info list. Because if you look on the bottom of the email, what does it say? Do not sell my data, right? Everybody has that. It's not on TCR. Aegis is doing dollar vets. Who's doing these dollar vets? Running 40,000 vets a day. That's a separate conversation you may want to have offline. But back to where you're going. I just got excited on where you were going with that. And
look, it's
even more insane.
The point makes itself. The point makes itself, right? TikTok is foreign owned, and we view it as a threat because of data sets it possesses and the ability to alter political campaigns. TCR is literally registered and has possession of registrations for all of our politicians, all of our businesses, everything they plan to do through the SMS channel, and it's foreign owned. No accountability to anybody. If TikTok is a threat to national security, so is TCR. Like, period, full stop. I don't even know how you could debate that, right? So, I
agree. My team agreed. I just gave up. We agreed too.
I want somebody to be no, but seriously, Johnny, I want someone to debate me. I want someone to take the other side of this and be like, nah, Troutman, it's cool.
Look, I connected as foreign owned. They own the short code. They're owned by Ericsson. Although Ericsson's whatever. They're all foreign owned. Everybody's foreign owned. Tata owns it. Our whole ecosystem is foreign owned. It's the same conversation. It's okay. But we're living in a different world that our Congress just voted, 362 to 50? In 4 days, they passed something in 4 days. So it's definitely a big deal. And we've been screaming for over a year and a half. I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody at the FCC, FTC, you know these people. They wouldn't let me cross the street over there. So look, when you told me to have hope, because I basically told you, I'm done. I quit. Nobody cares. What are we doing here?
Look, here's what I know, right? And this is why I asked you to have some faith. Right? The FCC is by far the most grown-up federal agency that exists today, right? They're not, even though they are somewhat political, They are staffed by, the professional bureaucrats. Like, look, you talk about the deep state, right? The deep state is a good thing. It keeps stuff on the rails, right? And the FCC is, in my opinion, like the deepest state that there is in this entire country, and that's a good thing. These are really intelligent, lifelong experts in their field who really understand the big picture. Like, these are smart people at the FCC. There's a reason why I'm like big fans of theirs and they're big fans of mine. Like, we get along. We see more or less eye to eye, maybe not on all the policy things, but in terms of approaches, in terms of like how the law ought to operate, how society ought to operate. We're very much aligned. And that is not necessarily true of really any other federal agency. I mean, they are unique. They are uniquely intelligent. They are uniquely enterprising and thoughtful in their approaches to things. Okay. So when I told you to have faith, I didn't mean to have faith in me. I mean, have faith that the commission, who is, again, they've got a lot of priorities. They've got a lot of things on their plate. And this is something that's just really beginning to percolate. And through the lens of what happened in Congress with TikTok and how quickly, to your point,
4 days.
We are intelligent enough as a country to recognize when there is the potential for vast spying. And look, man, this is the days of, what is it, the Vulcan typhoon? What is it? I mean, look, you're one of the best hackers in the world, right, Alan? So you know all about this, right? People think of hacking as like advanced computer algorithms that go in and take over stuff, and there's a little bit of that. But really, most of it's social engineering, right? Most of it is finding weaknesses. I mean, hacking is literally finding weaknesses in infrastructure, in systems of man that can be exploited. And when I look at how can China or another country hack into our telecom infrastructure, I am looking at foreign ownership 100 times out of 100, right? And you can tell me, well, lots of stuff's foreign owned. I don't care about lots of stuff. I care about this. And this, to me, is a problem. And so when I hear, we've got infrastructure being hijacked by other countries in the mobile ecosystem, and I look at this globalist board over here at the Mobile Brotherhood, MEF, right? And I hear about PCR and all the data it has in its possession. I mean, like, no wonder. Like, we are so vulnerable to attack because of the way that we're allowing ourselves to be, put on display to these foreign companies. Again, now, if they had to account to us, right, these are the encryptions that we have in place. Here are the firewalls. Here are the limitations where no foreign, parent company can get a hold of our data. Okay, cool. Like, I could see a paradigm where we don't care that it's foreign owned because there's protections in place. But there are none. There are none. And no one's even trying to put anything in place. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And very powerfully put.
Extremely powerfully put. I mean, you kind of dropped the mic on us. So I guess, I have faith again, except, our main screaming is the stopping of the spamming and the crime. The people that are using lead generators and the people you're representing aren't trying to rob grandma. They're trying to sell something, right? The people that we're talking about getting through the spam and the robocalling, which could really be eliminated, are the people that are just creating, crazy, horrible crimes on people. So that's been our scream, like stop scamming grandma. We think we found a solution, and we think the public is going to adopt it, that we've seen come across our table here in TADSummit, an innovative company. So we're hoping we go down that road. But boy, I know you have the friends in the FCC. That's why I came on your show almost begging, like, I know they're listening to you. I know everybody's listening to you. So if you're telling me they're the smartest guy out there, I'm telling you they're being misinformed. I'm telling you last week when they were in D.C., everybody who was in there was part of the grift. They're all on the grift. They're all making money. So until somebody can get up there and tell them the truth, which nobody has, because every single company there making money on it.
This is why they like me. That's why everybody likes me. I've got no agenda. I just come on. I just shout the truth at the top of my lungs. I'm beholden to nobody. That nobody pays me for the things I say. I don't make $1 off of any of this, right? Like, I do it because I believe it. That's it. That's it. And they know that. And I want to say one thing is that, my practice is focused on companies that are only doing outreach. They don't do cold calls, right? They only do outreach when a consumer raises their hand and says, hey, I'm interested in a mortgage loan. Will you please call me, right? Like that's literally the Loan Depots of the world, the good companies of the world.
Wait till you see TNID.
You might
buy TNID.
When the lead generators, right, these guys I was telling you about are selling bad leads, right? They're abusing consumers and selling these leads, and my clients are buying it. I mean, they're buying junk. They're buying fraud, right? They're buying liability. And they're ending up, they want to do things the right way, and they end up sending unwanted robocalls to somebody that had like, dude, I don't want this message. So that's why we created R.E.A.C.H, was to put a stop to it. So we are completely aligned. Right. My job, my goal, right, as an attorney, what I'm dedicating my career to, in addition to protecting people, is making sure that every time a phone rings, that consumer is expecting and wants that call. Right.
Exactly.
And that is what I'm trying to accomplish through R.E.A.C.H. And I think that's another layer to why
and not getting blocked. And not getting blocked.
Correct. Not getting blocked. That is correct. And so in my perfect world, right, I want to see a return to the common carrier doctrine that was the law and the bedrock in this country for over 80 years, and that led to such a healthy ecosystem that we had in telecom, right? That was healthy and strong. The bad guys got loose and started to close that up so that the good guys now are the only ones essentially who have access, right, to the network, not from a technological standpoint, from a legal standpoint, that will allow the carriers to go back to being common carriers and not having these obligations to block things, because I don't want them on the network to begin with from a legal perspective, at least from an American business perspective. Now, we are going to have some technological solutions for the offshore guys, right, who should never even be allowed into the American network in the world that I envision.
But there's a solution.
Right. That's exactly right.
I can't wait to introduce you to the geek on this other product. I can't wait, because you're going to go nuts. You're going to be like, wait a minute, where's this been? Why is nobody else using it? Because it was stifling.
Well, I look forward to that. It sounds fun.
Your R.E.A.C.H, your customers, the people you represent, and everything you stand for is solved with self-sovereign identity. And it can't be disputed. And
I look forward to hearing that.
It's just tech. I mean, Alan, geek boy, tell him. Don't listen to me. I'm not the geek here. Alan?
Yes. We have material on it. It can't be covered in a simple couple of sentences. It's focused on identity, where you control your identity and who can access your identity. It's as simple as that. Okay, so just imagine a world where you can say, I don't want any political messages. No political texting.
I want these people calling me, or I want these people calling me. His situation is consent-based.
Yes.
And those consent-based people are being blocked. They can't be blocked this way.
I like that. And look, anything that empowers consumers, is a good thing. To me, that's a good thing.
Exactly.
What I hate is power being taken out of the hands of the consumers, handed to the carriers with a blank check, or the TCR with a blank check, no standards, no accountability. I hate that. And that's the world we're living in right now. And I hate that world. I want the businesses to take accountability for their own behavior. I want them to behave righteously. I want consumers to be empowered to have their contact preferences honored. And I want the carriers to go back to being common carriers. Like that is what I'm looking for.
Perfect.
Excellent. I got two more questions. Alan likes to cut things off because he gets on my nerves. Alan, this is my show. This is Tell the Truth and Telecom. Czar, two more questions for you before you go, because who knows when I'm going to get you back. Number one, meth. What are you going to do there? Because it seems to me that there's not really an outreach. Look, Robert Gershman's a good guy. He's a good guy. And I can't believe he wrote that letter. Like, I cannot believe he was informed correctly. And Robert, if you're out there, listen to the man. Pay attention, okay? Because I put out a post the other day about how many outstanding shares you have. Because we're not playing here. And guys at meth, look, thought of your companies were good friends of you guys. Czar did nothing wrong except read something and be the expert that he is. And Czar, you got kicked off there because the lawyer who was on the panel was the ex-lawyer for TCR. So they booted you. You can believe it or not. We know the truth. And one more question, Czar, before you go. FTC, non-compete. I'm baffled on your response there. And I know you got a good one.
Well, I mean, it's stunning. That was a stunning decision from the FTC.
Stunning.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was very well informed. I don't think it was very thoughtful, and I don't think it's going to last very long. That thing is going to go down in flames. The commission absolutely does not have the authority to issue that rule. I don't. I mean, the people are saying, "Oh, you know, a judge in Texas is going to strike that down." A judge anywhere is going to strike that down. And with the conservative Supreme Court, the FTC is going to get handcuffs put on it by a ruling ultimately on this. It was, you know, when you overreach that badly as a federal agency, you are looking to be treated, you know, like you have a nanny court, like a parent, like looking over you from now on because you just can't behave yourself, right? So, I'm not gonna say I was disappointed in the ruling. I wasn't. I'm just stunned that they were that dumb. And this is what I'm talking about. Like the FCC is always so.
It almost seems like it was done more as a political. It's just a message. It's kind of like, hey, this is how we feel. Maybe. No, it's just insane.
Honestly, I don't know what to say about it. It was, I mean, stunning. Like I am literally stunned that they did that.
Did I get the speech? Did I get the czar speechless here?
Yeah. I mean, the FTC got me speechless. That's what I'm talking about before.
Okay.
Like the FCC, right? The Federal Communications Commission. It's like the grown-up agency, right? They do things in a very measured way, in a very thoughtful way. They never just come out and just do something ridiculous, right? FTC, like lately, they've just been the poster child for an irresponsible federal agency. They're
going after luxury handbags.
Struck down one of their favorite moves just like 2 years ago in a case called AMG Capital, saying that the FTC had been overriding its statutory authority for years. I mean, they're going to get handcuffed by the U.S. Supreme Court because of what they've done with the non-competes. And it's just bizarre that they're doing this.
Okay.
And on the the Robert email, I mean, I think, like, I don't know what's going on over there, but the guy's obviously under a lot of pressure. He's here.
But Brian Jones Lansky is on your board, and I'm sure Brian doesn't. He went to the show and evidently last week, and he kind of ticked everybody off. I heard on law enforcement, he had a little bit of an attitude over there. So I think Cinch went from like 13th on the list of being looked at to like number one with a bullet. What I heard, because we have access to everybody there, whoever's there.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people like to talk, right? Just going back to meth, like people like to talk, and people like to talk to me, and so I like I said, I'm not too worried about meth. I don't think they're going to be around too much longer. That's just a guess. And you had you had your Truth in Telecoms the other day, and you were like, Troutman's making a deal with Robert to get Dario kicked off the board.
It's because it didn't make sense. I thought you were just going to toss Dario, because Dario was suppressing our stuff too. But everybody loves Dario. They love him. He gives everybody a back massage. Everybody loves him. People like him. What are you laughing at? He never gave you one out?
No, he's never given me one.
I mean, he told me point blank on a stage one day, Johnny, I told everybody not to like your stuff or listen to your stuff, only me. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why would you suppress us? Like, this is America. So they've done it to us. And they get paid. It's pay to play. We're not pay to play, Czar. You know what I mean? So.
But anyway, so now you got my take on everything, man.
Excellent.
You've asked a couple questions.
We got your take.
Cool.
And Pooja, my girl, my queenie, I don't want to bring her up too much. I mean, just to respect half of her for what she did. We were big on that one.
That was just amazing.
To even call her, to even say this lady's she's gonna fly across. Can you imagine, Czar? This is an accomplished top-tier lawyer. I kept telling people, go look at her work. Like, go listen to her. This woman's gonna fly across the country because of you, Dario.
Really? It was a really good move for us. I mean, they really helped us out. Yeah. I mean, the defamation laws in this country are pretty strong, and trade libel for someone like Pooja, I mean, you want to talk about with a bullet, right? Like they just hand me a perfect gift, where if I really wanted to go to battle with a chainsaw, I mean, like this is not hard, right? They just handed me a beautiful lawsuit. But I'm not that kind of guy. We do things through different channels. We don't just go around litigating against people. That's not how we live. We defend against litigation. We don't bring litigation very often. Yeah. But it's nice to have that in my back pocket. It's like, wow, well, thank you for the ultimate trump card. I do appreciate that.
I hope you take your front pocket and you start educating your friends, because nobody's educating them. Nobody.
Yeah, look, man.
Anybody at those meetings, they're
help.
all, it's spam fest 101. They're just like swimming in spam. They love it because they make money on it. Can't blame them, right? I guess you can blame them. So Alan and I get really pissed off about that. I've given up focus on the innovators because I fought as hard as I could, Czar. So I'm hoping you talk to some of your friends. I'm hoping you start doing some more pieces. Our show is your show whenever you want to come on. Our audience is your audience. This is the Czar. This is who these people are. Hard-hitting attorneys. Welcome to TADSummit, Tad Czar. And
thank you, sir. It's great to be here, guys.
Tell Queenie and the ladies over there, we're behind them all the time. Keep fighting for. But listen, I'm going to tip you off on this TNID. I'm going to set it. I'm not kidding you. Do a half-hour session with this guy. You're going to call me personally and say, why didn't you tell me about this stuff before?
Okay. All right. Look, I hear you, man.
Like you're going to go to the FCC and say, excuse me, FCC, here you go. Can you deploy this? And some big companies are now talking to them, but it's something that's specifically geared for your audience. It's literally almost made for you, P-Gens, R.E.A.C.H, and the good Americans that you represent. This was created for you guys in order for you to say, no, you. They consented. They want this.
Yeah.
Don't block me.
Yeah.
So to Alan, you know what I mean? So Alan, He needs to hear your bill. I don't have the credibility that you have with Czar.
You got
it. I know, but not on the tech side. On the tech side, Alan's the boss.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this some other time, boys.
Exactly. This would be great. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Czar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll here for you guys. Yep.
Bye-bye now.